necessary and defensible, but the most recent action of the General Assembly, while well-intended, is off course, and I must veto House Bill 1570. I have signed the veto of House Bill 1570 today. I have notified the sponsors as well as the leadership in the House and Senate as well. But I wanted today to explain a little bit of the reasoning. If House Bill 1570 becomes law, then we are creating new standards of legislative interference with physicians and parents as they deal with some of the most complex and sensitive matters involving young people. It is undisputed that the population of minors who struggle with gender incongruity or gender dysphoria is an extreme minority. But while they are a minority, they deserve the guiding hand of their parents and of the healthcare professionals that their family has chosen. House Bill 1570 would put the state as the definitive oracle of medical care, overriding parents, patients, and healthcare experts. While in some instances the state must act to protect life, the state should not presume to jump into the middle of every medical, human, and ethical issue. This would be and is a vast government overreach. House Bill 1570 is opposed by the leading Arkansas medical associations, and the concern expressed is that denying best medical care to transgender youth can lead to significant harm to the young person, from suicidal tendencies and social isolation to increased drug use. In Arkansas, gender reassignment surgery is not performed on anyone under age 18. If House Bill 1570 simply prohibited gender reassignment surgeries, then I would sign the bill. But the bill is overbroad, extreme, and does not grandfather those young people who are currently under hormone treatment. In other words, the young people who are currently under a doctor's care will be without treatment when this law goes into effect. That means they will be looking to the black market or go out of state if they can afford it to find the treatment that they want and need. This is not the right path to put them on. Finally, I understand that the General Assembly will likely override this veto. House Bill 1570 had overwhelming support when it passed the first time, and as you know, it takes a simple majority to override the governor's veto in Arkansas. I am hopeful, though, that my action will cause conservative Republican legislators to think through the issue again and hopefully come up with a more restrained approach that allows a thoughtful study of the science and ethics surrounding the issue before acting. Government, under a conservative philosophy, should be restrained. This is an example of where restraint is better than overbroad actions that interfere with important relationships in our society. With that, I thank you for your attention and be glad to take any questions.
Governor, this action, does this reflect any reconsideration of signing the other measures that have been targeting transgender people in Arkansas? And also, are you hoping to send a message to legislators about other measures that are out there dealing with transgender youth that are still in the pipeline?
You take each bill separately, and as you know from my previous comments, the two previous bills related to transgender concerns were the Medical Conscience Act, which was broader than simply transgender. That covers a whole host of medical procedures or activity that someone may have a religious or conscious conviction against. And I look at that as consistent with freedom. It's consistent with being able to decide in a non-emergent fashion as to the health care services that you want to provide. And so I saw that as separate and distinct. The second bill was the Girls in Sport, And as I said, I'm a fan of women's sports, and I think it undermined women's sports to have biological males to compete in girls' sports in high school or college level. So I look at those as totally independent and separate measures. Now, the sad part about it is that the first two measures were considered as anti-transgender, anti-gay perhaps, and I think that is far from the truth. But you have to be concerned about the image that you are expressing from a state standpoint. And you know, I want people in Arkansas and across the country to understand that whether they're transgender or otherwise, that they're loved, they're appreciated, they make a part of our state, and we want to send the message of tolerance and diversity. You know, and so I looked at this bill totally separately, though, and each one of them stands on their own. And I do believe the legislators have been very well intentioned on this. They want to do what they see as the right thing, but I have one vote to cast, and I have to cast it in this fashion.
Are you hoping to have any conversations with legislators ahead of this vote to possibly override your veto, and what would those conversations look like?
Well, I've already had conversations with the sponsors of the House Bill 1570, and I explained my reasonings for it. It was a courtesy call as well. We have a good relationship. We work on a lot of different bills together. I've talked to the leadership as well. But whenever you had this bill passed with overwhelming majority, I fully expect a veto override, and that's the legislative prerogative, just like this is a responsibility that I have. So, you know, I've made my statement on it, and we'll see where it goes from here. Yes?
When considering House Bill 1570, did you meet with any transgender youth or healthcare providers that provided that kind of care?
I did. And people who know me, they wonder why I'm taking so long to make a decision, because when I make the decision, I've got to defend it, and I have to understand it. And so this weekend was the same pattern I've had previously. I've talked to, last week, I talked to transgender individuals who expressed their viewpoints to me. I've met with Arkansas Children's Hospital in terms of their treatment protocols and how they handle these issues and why they set up a specialty on this. I talked to national leaders on this as well, on both sides of the equation, and along with receiving literally hundreds, if not thousands, of communications from individuals across the country and across Arkansas.
Governor, back in 2015, when you kind of got to this point with the religious freedom bill that popped up, you sent it back with a lot of changes. You wanted it more narrowly focused, and they did that for you. Why not go that route with this bill?
Well, it's one of those things you probably can only do once, and so it's one that I appreciated that they did redo the bill to give us a Religious Restoration Act that I could sign. But when it gets to my desk, I really have two options: or sign it into law, veto it, or the third option could be to let it go into law without my signature. I've done all three, and as well as trying to send it back. This is the right way constitutionally to handle it. It is simply up to the legislature as to what they do now. They have options to override, not to override, or they could, you know, redo the legislation. But that is their prerogative once I've made this decision today.
So you mentioned that a few times that you expect the legislature to override your veto. Do you have any plans to make any phone calls, have any meetings to kind of try to sustain your veto?
Once they will know through private communication and the communication today my decision and my reasoning on this, and we'll see where it goes from there. Steve?
Yes, sir. To what extent, to what extent was it communicated to you on
Actually, there was very little, if any, expressed on these bills in terms of economic impact. Now, you see what's happening around the country, and you recognize corporate policy can engage in some of these social, cultural issues, and so it wouldn't have surprised me had that occurred, but in fact it did not occur. I think the message of business and message of those concerned about the economic future of Arkansas, the focus has been on passing a hate crimes bill, which will be in Senate committee this afternoon. And so that's their hope, and I think that's what they've concentrated on. I have not had a great deal of communications on the business side on this particular issue.
On topic of that hate crime legislation, this is the second hate crime bill that's proposed, kind of an alternative. You previously said that you do support the first one. What are your thoughts on the second one that is hitting committee today?
I support it. This is legislatively driven. Speaker Shepard and Senate Pro Tem Hickey have worked hard on it. They wanted to get a bill passed, and they thought this was the best vehicle to do it. And I'm very appreciative of how hard they've worked on it. I hope the Senate Judiciary Committee passes it out. You know, this is one of those things that I have a high regard for the legislative process, and while the original bill was probably the strongest, this one does move the ball forward, accomplishes a great deal in terms of protecting any group that might be targeted because of who they are. That is success under any definition. As the Speaker has said, the penalties are more severe, the breadth is more clear, and so I hope that they pass that today. The only thing's missing is a strict itemization. This is unique. It's an Arkansas solution, and you know, if it passes, we'll see what the outcome is, but I think it will be positive.
In your discussions with people on this bill today, did you have any of those conversations about the likelihood of this being overridden and kind of what to do from there?
No, you know, I looked at this bill as a matter of where do I want my voice to be? What is my position on this, and what should reflect the position of Arkansas on it? And how can I express the right balance between, you know, what people might perceive as their values versus the broader values that might be in different families and in different communities, and the struggle that young people have. And at this particular point in time, with the medical information that we have, interfering by the state in a parent, in a child, in a doctor-patient relationship did not make sense to me. And so this was not about whether my veto is going to be sustained, whether it's overwritten. I've acted based upon the assumption that it will be overridden because I know that there's strong feelings and support for this, and it had a very high vote percentage. But we'll see. I make my position. You know, it is important for people of Arkansas who care about this issue, but also will question why I'm doing this. I want them to understand why I'm doing this and the thought process behind it. Yes.
Is there a room to the Republican Party in Arkansas, conservative leadership when it comes to legislatures? We're seeing veto this, yet we're also seeing a potential confirmation hearing for Dr. Jose Romero. Is there a rift going on here?
Between myself and the legislature?
Yes, and the Republicans?
Well, I think it reflects that we're a big party with a lot of different competing ideas. And as I've told the legislature many times, there's a natural tension that our founding fathers designed between the different branches of government. That's what makes our democracy healthy. And so there should be that natural tension and sometimes disagreement. This year has probably been a little bit more challenging because it's a longer session. We're doing more cultural bills than we've done in the past. We have very vigorous debates about that, and there's always room for disagreement within the party. But I think I just had a lunch with the legislative leadership, and we have probably one of the most positive relationships that we've had, working on key issues. Our communications goes well, and so I think it's a good relationship that we have, but it can be defined sometimes with a little tension, and that's okay.
Do you think the legislature is going overboard with the number of cultural wars type bills that are coming through right now, especially as quickly as they are?
Well, some of them are unnecessary. I mean, you know, I signed a bill today. I won't try to define which one it is, but it's a bill I don't necessarily disagree with, but we don't have a problem in Arkansas. And so I signed the bill, but was that needed, and why did we do this? And so I've always concentrated on the tenets of the Republican Party, which if you go back to the Ronald Reagan era, it is social conservatism, it is economic conservatism, and it is strong defense. Well, in Arkansas, we don't have to worry about the defense side of things, and so, you know, we're looking at our economic conservatism, and we're looking at our cultural or social conservatism, and sometimes those clash, and that's where you get some tension, and it's okay, because we all have different perspectives that we bring, but sometimes it is important to remind ourselves that part of Republican principles is a restrained government. Part of the base of the Republican Party is that libertarian strain. Well, the more you act as a government on some of these social issues, which again, I'm pro-life, and so, but that's a life that is issued, and I sign those bills, I support those bills, I want those bills. But sometimes you've got to pull back and say, is this really the role of the state? Is this really reflecting confidence in parents and doctors to make good decisions? And so I hope that my statement today, both here in Arkansas but also nationally, just causes Republicans to think again about who we are and how sometimes we have to restrain government in areas that in our own personal lives we might say, you know, we're going to act in a particular way that, but we can't make everybody else act in the same way. That's, to me, called a restrained government.
Do you think this could withstand a legal challenge? ACLU said if it's enacted, they will sue.
I don't know the answer to that. The big concern I had is that you have patients in Arkansas, and there's probably fewer than 200 young people in Arkansas that would be on any kind of hormone treatment with the permission of their parent and their doctor. This does not have a grandfather clause, as I said. And so if this bill is passed, what happens to those young people that are currently under treatment? That makes my heart hurt to think about it, and I wish the legislation should have included a grandfather clause as well as being more narrow.
Governor, how much did your conversations over the past 2 days with transgender people or people with hospitals change your mind or affect your decision?
Well, it educates me and it informs me, and so it strengthens your compassion. It gives you more understanding. But at the same time, those that I spoke on the other side of the equation also informed me, and I understood their sincerity. And that's what makes these kind of things a tough decision, because both sides of this issue are well-meaning, looking after the good of our society in their own way. And so I wouldn't want to say one side you know, informed me the most. Both sides informed me, and I had to make a judgment.
The NCAA has indicated that they may not want to hold tournaments in states with laws like Senate Bill 354 affecting
can you talk a little bit slower for me, or yeah, take off your mask if you could.
Trying to project. So the NCAA has indicated that they may not want to hold tournaments in states with laws like Senate Bill 354, and then we've seen the MLB's response to new voting laws in Georgia. What's your kind of response to those athletic organizations' decisions, and is it something you're taking into account?
I think they're not making good judgments. I actually spoke to a leader of the Georgia House of Representatives today on a separate matter in my position as Vice Chair of the National Governors Association. So we got into, obviously, the voting bill. Sorry, my apologies directly to you. Yeah, why don't you help me out there? Whether you agree or disagree with the Georgia law, it hurts the average citizen of Georgia. It hurts the baseball fans. It hurts the baseball vendors and the hospitality industry whenever large corporations make decisions on social policy, and I struggle with that. So I'm not very pleased with Major League Baseball's decision. I don't think it's beneficial to the sport or beneficial even to those in Georgia that they're trying to influence. I heard the mayor of Atlanta talk, and she might be opposed to the voting bill that was passed, but she sure doesn't like the fact that her city and her state is being hurt by this. And so in terms of that influence on me, I try to make my decisions based upon other factors, but I also recognize the image of Arkansas is important and that we have a growing economy, and when people want to look at Arkansas, I want them to think of a place that is tolerant, that has a hate crime bill, that is acceptance of people that might be different, and that we put a value on other people's lives that might be different than ours. I want that image of Arkansas. So image is also always important for a governor, and the impression people have of our state, and so that is a factor, even though I don't make it simply on economic decisions. Final question.
Speaking of image, you led into it. Are you still the Vice Chair of the Governor Association? First, I remember who's the chairman, and talk about that situation. Is he still the chairman of the Governor Association?
He is the chairman. So the way the National Governor Association works is that the Republican caucus, if you will, the Republican governors will select who they want to be the head of the NGA when it's the Republicans' turn. Right now it's the Democratic turn, and so the Democrats chose Andrew Cuomo to be their nominee for vice chair and then became chair. And so even if Andrew Cuomo stepped aside, it's the Democrats' chance to fill that position. And so it's really a separate issue. I'm not going to be chair until August and under any circumstances. So I'm happy with that. I'll bide my time. Thank you all. I know this was a narrow news conference, but I thought it was important and appreciate y'all coming out today. Thank you.